Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and do some more home defense testing, and today we've got a very interesting combo to try out. I've never tested any shells from this company before, and one of you guys sent me a good variety of stuff from them, so I'm definitely excited to see what they can do, because even though this one might be a little bit more of a basic option when compared to the rest of their stuff, they definitely have some very interesting loads available, that's for sure. So I'm looking forward to seeing what these can do. But as for the shells we got today, big thank you to Adam for sending some of these over. He kind of surprised me with these. I was not expecting them, but he sent us some of these. It's kind of hard to tell with their packaging, but these are some Hickory flat bore shells. I've heard of this company on a number of occasions, but I've never tested anything from them, and they have some really strange ideas on shells, that's for sure. But these ones in particular are their 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch super buck loads is what they call them. They're a 2 3/4 inch 15 pellet load of double-aught buck at 1100 feet per second, and based on what their website claims, that 1100 feet per second is from a 19-inch barrel. And yes, they are indeed a 15 pellet load in a 2 3/4 inch shell, which is also something you rarely ever see, unless it's a little bit more of a custom oriented load, kind of like this is. But you can also see it's a very standard loading as well. They're not plated pellets, there's no buffer, there's no wad or anything like that, just a plastic overshot card and a little gas seal down here at the base. So will they actually give us good patterns with that simple of a load? I don't know, we're gonna see. I've got a couple of these packages of them, but first up we're gonna put them through a home defense scenario, since this may be a decent option for that, for somebody that wants to use double-aught buck and have 15 pellets to get a little more energy on an intruder. That might be for them if the recoil isn't too bad anyway, so we'll see what they can do. As for the shotgun we're running them through, I brought out my Remington 870 special purpose with an 18.5 inch cylinder bore barrel on it, so no choke constriction at all. Very short, compact, home defense style setup. This is about as basic and common as it gets for up close and personal home defense scenarios, and that's exactly how we're going to test them today. So I've got 5 different silhouettes painted on targets down there. We're going to shoot 5 shots. We're going to start at 7, then move to 10, 15, 20, and 25 yards. That's going to cover everything from both in the same room to down the hallway to out across the living room and even out into the yard or to a shed or something like that, if for whatever reason you find yourself in a scenario where you need to take that shot. That would be up to you at that point if you should or shouldn't take it, but we need to see if we have some sort of range limitation here with a defensive oriented setup like this. So let's get you guys a view of those targets. We'll shoot all of our shots, I'll measure everything out, and we'll see what these Hickory flat bore super buck 15 pellet loads can do in a home defense scenario. Okay, so we'll run through our chrono numbers real quick before we go down and look at our targets. Those shells were surprisingly difficult to get a chronograph reading off of. I think I definitely got 1, maybe 2, but I tried it right at the muzzle, a foot or 2 in front, a couple more feet in front, and it just didn't like to read for whatever reason. These definitely acted way different than most other buckshot loads going through the chrono, that's for sure. But we had 333, which is obviously a misread, 1028, which I think that is the most accurate number we actually got, and I think that's probably pretty legitimate. Their claim's 1100 from a 19-inch barrel. We have an 18.5, so 1128. I think that's in the ballpark of being realistic. Then 317, another error. Then 912, which I guess that's possible. It's not too far off, I guess, but probably another misread, I would imagine. And then 226. So I'd say low 1,000 feet per second range, 1,020, 1,030 is probably pretty realistic. And for a defensive scenario, that's plenty good enough, but these are not a light recoil load. They definitely are a little bit stouter in that department. I would say they are above average. Pretty much the same as a 3-inch 15 pellet hunting oriented shell would be, is kind of what I'd compare them to. So that is a factor as well. But here are the actual patterns that we got. We'll start up close and personal in the same room or down a hallway with somebody at 7 and 10 yards. Over here at 7, we had an 8-inch spread, nice even spread of them there. And we kept that same pretty even spread over to 10 yards with 11 and a quarter inches. So it opened it up a little bit there, but inside your house, that is absolutely going to get the job done, no doubt about it. Now, on one hand, I like that pattern because it gives you a little more wiggle room, but it keeps a nice even spread of a lot of pellets for a 2 3/4 shell. So that is a bonus for somebody that prefers that kind of pattern, but it is nowhere even close to a lot of the other defensive oriented buckshot loads we've tested. The Hornady Critical Defense, the Federal Flight Control, all of those are going to blow this out of the water. With those, 2 to 3 inches all the way to 10 yards is what you're going to get all day long. And that isn't exactly what we saw here. So keep in mind that these shells are about $4 a round, so they're not exactly the cheapest shells out there either, especially for how basic the actual load is as far as components go. But now moving out to 15 yards, which for some people, that might be about the max range that they would think of shooting a defensive shotgun in that kind of situation. We definitely opened it up to 20 inches of spread. Still kept a pretty even spread of pellets, but when you're looking, you only see 13 of them here, and there's definitely 15 of them in there. But I think what we were starting to see is kind of this one right up here in the center of your screen. There's multiple pellets stacked in there, and potentially this guy down here as well that tore kind of weird. And I think that trend is going to continue as we get a little farther range. And I'll talk about why I think that might be a possibility here in a second. But still, at 15 yards, if we had that centered up a little bit better, not really entirely sure why it drifted to the right, but it did. But if we had it centered up, you would still most likely keep all of your pellets within center mass area, and it would still be very effective for sure. But now moving over to 20 yards, here's where you're really going to have to start making the decision whether you should or shouldn't take the shot. And there's different scenarios where you could or you probably shouldn't, but I'll leave that up to you guys. But on this one, we definitely opened it up. We had 29.5 inches of overall spread, but we had 13 inches across for the main central portion of the pattern right there. That's pretty decent, but we definitely started to string them around. And if you look again, we're only showing 11 pellets with a nasty little clump right here on the bottom left of the pattern. And that tore really weird for a clump of pellets. And I think what we're starting to see is a little bit of a pattern where these pellets might actually be starting to stick to the base gas seal piece. If that plastic is too soft or this shell's getting pushed too hard, and 15 pellets is a lot of weight to push in front of it, those bottom couple pellets stacked in the shell could be kind of forcing themselves and pressing themselves into that little plastic gas seal base wad, and they might be flying as one just clump down range. It's a possibility, and moving over to 25 yards, I think we're going to see it again. And here is that 25-yard pattern. Once again, up to you whether you put yourself in a situation that you need to take this shot or not. That's up to you to determine. But we opened it up to 29.25 inches of overall spread on the farthest two across. But our width across the middle here is 26 inches from that left pellet all the way to this far right pellet, right up close to the edge of the paper. So definitely started to get a little erratic, starting to spread some flyers out. They're starting to clump up. You got one up there, kind of 3 over here, 3 down there, 3 in the middle. But yet again, we see this big nasty clump of multiple pellets at least stuck in one giant hole. And that is a trend that we've seen twice already now. And with that kind of looking like more of a vertical slot, and the fact that we're missing a couple pellets from the rest of our pattern, I really do think that we have a couple pellets sticking in that base gas seal. So am I overly impressed with these? Not really, for the price and for how basic they're loaded. I've definitely seen way better and way more consistent patterns, that's for sure. Backing up here and looking at everything from up close and personal out to longer ranges, I would say these are kind of mediocre. I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze for the extra couple of pellets in a 2 3/4 shell. They're not cheap. They're not loaded any kind of special way. The patterns aren't overly impressive. They're perfectly fine, obviously, at closer ranges, and some people might even prefer that kind of a spread in at close range in a crunch time scenario. But the extra recoil, the added cost, the inconsistent patterns that we were seeing out there with stuff potentially stuck in the gas seal, I don't know. I'd say these are kind of mediocre, to be honest with you. They're okay. They would absolutely do the job. I wouldn't want to stand in front of them, that's for sure, but I don't know that I would go out of my way to buy these specifically for my home defense load either. Maybe we try them in a hunting scenario through some more aftermarket chokes, some tighter chokes and stuff, and see what they can do for that scenario. They might be good there, but for a home defense scenario, obviously plenty good enough, but probably not my preferred load either when we consider all of the factors involved. And here are a couple of those base wad gas seal pieces that I was actually able to find. You can see we have one that looks pretty normal here, but these other two, you can definitely see where it looks like there was a pellet stuck in the edge of that one, and really up here as well. I don't know that I've ever seen one of these do that. That sure looks like a clump of pellets that kind of forced their way in there and got stuck in flight and just did some weird things. You can kind of see the rounded edge of a pellet imprinted right there as well. So at closer ranges, if you get lucky, this is probably what it's supposed to look like, and that's why we kept a nice even spread. But you can even see on this how the edge is just starting to pull down a little bit. Looks like there might have been a pellet starting to press its way into the edge there. So I don't know, maybe loaded a little too hot, too fast burning of a powder, getting these nice and hot and a little bit softer, having a pellet stick in them, or maybe just pushing too much weight in front of them. That's also another possibility. But I think that's kind of confirmation on what we were seeing here with the clumps of pellets that we were seeing kind of all jammed in the same hole and the inconsistent patterns. I think that kind of stuff will do it right there. I don't know that I've ever seen that kind of stuff happen. So pretty interesting for sure. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that performance right there? Honestly, that's probably about realistic for what I expected to see. Just going based on my 400 previous buckshot tests that I've done. When you do that many, you start to notice patterns. You start to notice consistent trends between how shells are loaded, and you can probably pick out which ones are going to be better performers just by the components they have. And it seems like these have a good idea behind them. 2 3/4 shell with more payload going down range for the people that want that. But the execution, I think, could have been done a little bit better. Could they have fit a wad in there? Maybe, maybe not with that many pellets, but they could have at least put a little bit of buffer material in there, or maybe put copper plated pellets or something of that nature in there. I think that probably would have made a pretty decent difference with the pattern consistency. But leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Hickory flat bore shells? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is this a combo you would ever use? Or are you kind of in the same boat like I am? Too expensive, too much recoil, not over the top performance, just not really worth it for you either? Or maybe what other tests do you want to see me do with the other handful of these shells I've got left? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.